All right, so thanks for tuning in. We're here with some of the guys from Right to Work, Right to Welfare here who have a conference coming up on the 17th of October here. They're going to tell you a bit about that in a few minutes. But first, if you just want to introduce yourselves.
My name's Sean Brady. I'm a development worker with participation in the practice of rights.
My name is Bertie Atkinson. I'm a member of Right to Work, the Right to Welfare group.
My name's Michaela. I'm a volunteer of the Right to Work, Right to Welfare group and a youth worker in Belfast.
I'm Gareth. I'm a member of the Right to Work, Right to Welfare group.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about the group. What sort of work do you do?
Who's going first on that one?
There you go.
PPR, our human rights organisation, we support a lot of different groups using a human rights-based approach to develop campaigns and essentially hold government to account for human rights failings they identify. The Right to Work, Right to Welfare group grew out of a lot of our groups asking questions around welfare reform a few years ago. Started organising outside Corporation Street Social Security Office, asking people questions about what was happening to them. And out of those answers, they built the campaign, which the group could tell you a wee bit more about.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the campaign started off with the Right to Work. The Right to Work was Real Jobs Now motion put about back to Belfast City Council, whereby we contacted a lot of people throughout the city, including all councillors in Belfast City Hall, except the DUP. We spoke to all of them, we got support from them all, and we got our motion passed early 16, I think it was, whereby they created jobs for the long-term unemployed whenever they were hunting out the procurement procedure. They put in social clauses, so as whenever money was being spent, long-term unemployed people were given the opportunity to engage and get a job. In the first year, we created 116 jobs that would not have been created if it hadn't been for our campaign. Then after that, we went into the welfare. We started to look at welfare. We went around all the dole offices throughout Belfast city centre. Andy Town, Falls Road, Shankill Road, Shaftesbury Square, Newton Ards Road, Corporation Street, Royal Avenue. We stood outside there, we got surveys filled in, and we came up with what we're doing now is the People's Proposal.
Yeah.
And we're having a conference on the 17th of this month at the Spectrum Centre on the Shankill Road with regards to our findings and trying to get support for that to get the government to change their policies with regards to sanctions.
Yeah, brilliant. And looking at the wee flyer that you've got for the thing, looking at some of the stuff that you're saying, like
2008, the beginnings of welfare reform. It isn't. The circumstances were that there was one food bank in Belfast. Now there's 14 food banks in Belfast.
Yeah.
So it's not it's ironic that the increase in food banks in Belfast when there was the change in social benefit. So yeah, we've been looking at the impact of that on single parent families, on sick and disabled, and how sanctions are and
officials are saying unemployment is dropping, but the number of people who are long-term unemployed continues to rise. Is that some of the things that me just want to start this conference?
Yeah, that's the main direction. Is that when, as Bertie was saying, when we were surveying for the last 4 years, it was collecting real statistics from people on the street that are directly impacted by the welfare reform. So it's not government statistics that can be manipulated in ways that we spent 4 years, as Bertie says, standing outside dole centres picking up real statistics with real people that are really impacted. For instance, in the government withdrawing their benefits, how that is affecting people and driving them into food poverty, mental illness, and all our detrimental circumstances.
Yeah, and so tell us a bit more about why you are going to do this conference. Is it to let more people know about your findings, and just to get them more aware of some of these sanctions? Yeah.
Well, it's a call. It's a call on the government to do their job correctly, to support their civil servants. They're servants of the people who elect them, and we're asking them to support the most vulnerable in society, not to demonise them or punish them for being vulnerable within their situations. We come from a unique environment. We're Northern Ireland, where it is still coming out of conflict. So there's a lot of issues there that needs to be addressed, and there's a lot more complex issues on unemployment and mental health and social deprivation. So what we're calling on in this campaign is to have impact assessments and due process before anybody loses out on their social welfare. So practically when a decision maker decides that someone isn't worthy on receiving social welfare, either if it is their job seekers allowance or if it is their PIP allowance, sick, which would refer to sick and disabled people, that they go through a rigorous procedure which is due process. So someone shouldn't be punished until they have a proper trial.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Is that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just it's worth noting as well, going back to your point on the employment statistics and that unemployment looks like it has went down. That's gone part and parcel with the mandatory government schemes that
Yeah.
are being implemented across the board. So, for example, the most current one, the steps of success. If anybody's been in job seekers for 9 months or more, they're mandated to this, so they don't have a choice and they must attend it. And they're no longer seen as unemployed. They're seen as though they're on a training program.
Yeah.
Whenever they didn't have any choice in partaking in that. And often whenever they are mandated, they're not able to access any other programs that the likes of Youth Action and other youth providers are providing on
Yeah.
need and on a needs-led foundation. They're often not able to avail of those opportunities because they're mandated to this, and that's just a manipulation of statistics is all it is. So in the Right to Work, Right to Welfare campaign not only provides a support for those people whose voices have been silenced in amongst that process and people who are sitting feeling like they're the only one going through this, but it also holds those to account to say whenever you're releasing these statistics to say that unemployment has gone down, actually in fact it hasn't.
Yeah. So people might be getting these training programs or being put into employment, but it's only in the short term, and it's only really being used for statistics, really. Yeah. Is that what you are saying?
It's also like it's an entire culture
Yeah.
in our social security system now that vilifies anybody who comes to access social security, that subjects them to the cruelest of tests and screenings and assessments and processes and tick box exercises for like a paltry amount of money. You know what I mean? For minuscule amounts of money, and that against the backdrop of what the bankers done and what the tax evaders are doing and what everything else is doing.
Yeah.
So what we've seen and heard, and what the Right to Work, Right to Welfare group have seen and heard at Dole's in Belfast and the assessment centres run by Capita and ATOS, and that the back to work schemes run by the likes of NGS and those other private providers, what we've seen is that people who need to access social security, and that's everybody from the guy with a job who isn't getting enough to pay the rent,
Yeah.
through to the people with full-time care responsibilities, through to the mummy with kids trying to get back into work and also trying to get a bit of a hand out at the same time to help her do that, and a million different reasons why anybody would access social security, every one of them under attack, every one of them with basically a blanket approach to how they're treated and the stuff they're subjected to. And you only see, I mean, every week there's another story. Last week the headlines was a mum in West Belfast with stage 4 cancer, assessed by someone who's called a healthcare professional working for a private company, and told that she didn't meet the standards and wasn't entitled to the social security. And that decision was rubber stamped by a government employee called a decision maker.
Yeah.
How are we operating a system that talks to a woman with stage 4 cancer who needs money to support herself and her child and a healthcare professional, someone who someone says is a professional, can say that that woman is not fit to get any support. What this event is about, and that's why it's called conscious cruelty, it's about exposing that they know the story. The people who are doing this know exactly what the problem is, and they know that it's wrong. They're conscious of it. They're conscious of the cruelty that's being visited upon people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be happening. And this group has identified basic solutions, basic simple checks that could be put in place that would make sure that kids aren't ending up in food banks. You know what I mean? And that's what the event's doing. It's a call to action. It's an exposing of the people at the top. Leo O'Reilly, the permanent secretary of the Department for Communities, still to this day refuses to meet with this group, still refuses to engage with the research, still refuses to support the proposals that political parties, trade unions, advice workers all support. The councils, the vast majority of councils support the group as well. So it's calling all that out, but it's also calling people to action and saying, join us, be human rights monitors with us, be at these brews, be at these assessment centres, expose this stuff and do something about it.
Yeah. And you says about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
We also need our assembly to get back into power so as they can make the decisions. If Leo O'Reilly's not going to do it, then it's up to the flipping our ministers who we elect into flipping Parliament. It's up to them to change it so as, because they're not changing the law, they're only changing a process.
Yeah.
So we're not asking them to change the law. Leo O'Reilly could do it himself, but he won't do it. So he needs to come under pressure. The only way he can come under pressure is if there is political clout there. And political clout means Stormont is up and running. Arlene Foster and Michelle O'Neill say that they represent equality for all. Equality for all does not include the sick, the disabled and the unemployed.
Yeah.
When Arlene Foster was being interviewed with regards to the HRI scandal, she asked for due process. She got it. Entitled to it the same as anyone who is charged with a crime. The only people who don't get due process is the sick, the disabled and the unemployed. Whenever you lost your benefits when you're unemployed, you lost everything including your housing benefit, so you don't get a penny. The reason being, you missed an appointment, you failed on your contract. Our politicians were elected to represent us at Stormont. They haven't done for over 18 months. They've failed in their contract. Now the Secretary of State has decided she's going to sanction them and she's going to reduce their wages. But what she said is, I have to be mindful of the bills they have got to pay and the mortgages. What about the bills that the unemployed have got to pay, the sick, the disabled? Do they not have bills? Of course they do. So it's about time we had due process and we had equality throughout this country, sick, disabled and unemployed.
Yeah. And, you mentioned about, being vilified for being a vulnerable person. And do you think even in this sort, like the week-to-week, signing on process, the stories are always, that it gets tougher and tougher, and it's just increasingly more strenuous and more, minuscule details and being being punished for missing the smallest thing and being capped for assessments constantly. Do you think that is increasingly getting harder for vulnerable people to?
I mean, it's unquestionably getting harder, both from, Gareth's been through these experiences, Bertie's been through these experiences, both from the experiences we hear on the street and the government's own statistics. So the whole machine is designed to keep people sort of ticking over in an environment where they're not, like one of the first things that people said to us in Corporation Street Social Security Office was, why do they keep sending me to look for these jobs that aren't there? And that's because the jobs are not being created. The jobs that are being created are your 0 hours, your call centres, your things that people are forced into under duress because they need pennies. And against that backdrop, the social security system has just turned into more and more and more punishment. So what we're seeing now in the government's own statistics is that people are leaving the social security system. They're signing off the brew, but they're not going into employment. So where are they going? Where are these thousands of people who they're forcing off the brew going? And then you wonder why you're walking about and there's more homeless people on the streets and there's 15 food banks in Belfast. That's where they're going, and that's where these policies are driving people.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think this event is great. And tell us a bit, you're going to have a few, guest speakers at the event. Who is it that's going to be there?
I'll check on the flyer. No, Some of the people that the Right to Work group have got to back their campaigns over the years have been as high as, I mean, Bertie's been in Geneva and Brussels talking to the
Yeah.
United Nations special rapporteurs on poverty, all of that. But these guys are experts on economics, human rights, and due process, and they're coming in to reflect on the evidence that the group are going to present.
Yeah.
But the group is also launching a platform on that day of new thinking on new economics, things like universal basic income, time banks, progressive procurement, stuff that's happening all over the world, where
Yeah.
people have their thinking caps on and are really doing stuff to challenge us, and stuff where like the likes of councils, the likes of politicians who want to do business properly are embracing some of these things. So we're hoping that some of the people here will sit up and listen to it and take a bit of advice from these experts as well as from the people on the ground.
We've also got support from Ken Loach, who directed I, Daniel Blake. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that film.
I haven't seen it, but
Very
I've heard of
powerful
it, yes.
film, and I advises all to go because it's true to life with regards to what happens at the doles throughout the UK.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and tell me all about the group. And yeah, for just remind everyone of the details again of the conference. It's on the 17th of October, and it's in the Spectrum Centre on the Shankill, and it's called Conscious Cruelty. And it's going to be running from 10 o'clock to 1. So yeah, thanks very much, guys, for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.